what are the donkeys' names?
They don't have names yet. Ian's supposed to come up with some names. He hasn't yet.
Ian hasn't generated names.
Mm-mm. I suspect once he's out there more, he'll generate some names.
Yeah, it's been a winter. They're
Yeah.
just furry things.
Right.
Okay, I can't do this laid back like. I have to get some sort of professional guys.
Okay.
Okay, I want to talk first of all about family court and what is family court.
Family court is really a hybrid.
Okay, I need you to start that over. Well, I was going to have them do it anyway because I didn't like the lip lick in the middle of it. So.
And no kicking of the baby toys.
All right. Let me itch my ear too. Family court is really a hybrid of courts of different jurisdictions. And the concept behind family court and sort of part of the mission is one family, one court. So the court sort of has concurrent jurisdiction over some issues which pertain to district court and some issues which pertain to circuit court. With the concept being that when a family finds themselves in the court system, there's often several things that are going on. There may be issues of domestic violence, which is covered by a portion of which would have originally been in district court, but is heard by the family court because they want the family court judge. Then when they get to what can often be a divorce case stemming out of that sort of situation, the judge has knowledge of the whole, what's going on with the family. And by the same token, when you have a abuse and neglect case, that case stays with the court even though it kind of rolls up through the jurisdiction. So a dependency abuse and neglect case occurs, and then the circuit court termination of parental rights case might be filed if through the court intervention you're not able to get to a point where the children can be returned to the parents. So that's what family court is the court that's to deal with issues, all of the issues pertaining to the family, and try to keep people in front of the same judge throughout the different facets of what might be going on in a family that's in crisis or that finds themselves in the family court system.
Okay, so I have the dullest family in the world. We never have anything interesting happen to us at all. Why is the family court system important to me?
The family court system is important to you because even though you may not wind up in family court, one of your friends might, or one of your sisters or brothers, or one of your cousins. Someone you know is going to wind up in family court, be it for a divorce, for a beyond control teenager, a child support issue, because people get divorced and need child support. Someone you know is going to wind up in family court, and you want someone who's competent, who understands not only how the court system works, but also what the folks who find themselves in family court are going through. And that's why you want a qualified and competent family court judge. That's why you care.
Okay. What is your experience with family court?
I practiced law for 17 years, and I've always been in family court. I opened my own practice, and the first case I took was a step-parent adoption. The second case I took was a divorce. So I've been practicing family court since the beginning. And I also was appointed by Judge Jerry Bowles, who is the retiring judge who I seek to replace, as what's called a parent's attorney in his court. When parents are accused of abuse or neglect of their children, under the Kentucky Constitution, they're guaranteed an attorney, and most of the time they can't afford an attorney, so the court appoints them one. So I was one of the court-appointed attorneys for Judge Jerry Bowles very early on, in 1997, and served in that role for 2 years, where I would try the district court case, the abuse and neglect case, but then also on several occasions I was appointed on termination of parental rights cases, where it was a case where my client, for whatever reason, was not going to be able to parent their child, and so the state had to move to the termination action. So I would represent parents in termination of parental rights cases. In 1999, I began working. I came to the attention of a different family court judge, and I began working in her court as a advocate for abused and neglected children. So I became the attorney for the abused and neglected kids. And I've done that for 14 years. And out of that also stems all the abuse and neglect cases, but also more termination cases than I can count, because many times those kids sadly don't go home to their parents. So then what we seek is what we call permanency, either permanent custody if they're with a relative, or what we call a relative placement, or if they're in foster care, then we seek to terminate the parental rights so that the child can then be adopted. So out of that, I've also participated in adoptions, where I've represented children who are being adopted. Through it all, I've always had my private practice, and I've done all manner of family court cases, custody cases, divorce cases, child support cases. I've argued on multiple occasions custody issues before our state Supreme Court and before the Court of Appeals. Right now, I'm working on a domestic violence appeal where I've partnered with the Mary Byron Project because I represented a victim of domestic violence, and the found abuser has appealed the case, and I've worked with the Mary Byron Project on the issue of lethality factors in domestic violence cases. So, and of course, I'm an adoptive parent. So I have been through the family court system twice as someone adopting a child. And in my private practice, I've represented parents who were adopting children. So I've done all manner, every issue in family court.
So you have, in the nature of your job, you have no control over who walks in the door and what their situation is. So you get kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly of family situations.
Yes.
Does that take an emotional toll?
It does. It can make you, there are days it can make you tired. There are days when you're very frustrated because you know that a case hasn't gone the way it should go. And then there are also cases where it's frustrating because your client doesn't follow your advice. So yes, it can make you tired. I think an important qualification or character trait that you want in a family court judge, though, is that someone who can look at a situation, and even though a person is maybe not the best parent, or you know that the person isn't doing what they should be doing, people still need to be treated with respect. And no matter how tired you are, no matter how irritated you are with them, you have to be respectful of people. But you have to make the right decision. And it may be a decision that makes them not like you very much. And it's also been the case in my practice when I have known that my work would not, could be hurtful to a child. And in those cases, if I believe that a client is not doing what I've asked them to do, or is putting a child at risk, I get out of the case. I'm not an attorney who's going to stay in a case because a client can pay my bill. I have always believed that if I believe that I'm harming someone, I'm not going to be in the case.
So have you had to step away from clients?
I have, yes.
I thought lawyers were supposed to defend whoever comes in. Everybody's entitled to the...
We have, just like clients have the right to fire attorneys, attorneys have the right of their conscience to decide whether they're going to continue undertake a representation or whether they're going to continue to undertake a representation. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to disclose anything that is confidential or shouldn't be disclosed, but certainly all attorneys have the right to choose which cases they take and which cases they stay in.
Okay. How's the family court system working right now? I mean,
The family court system is at a challenging place right now, I think. You know, this is Kentucky, and we have budget cuts, and issues related to that. And recently, Jim Birmingham, the family court administrator, has retired. And I think that's part of the reason you're seeing 6 out of 10 family court justices retire or not seek re-election, because there's going to be a lot more, I think, clerical and managerial type work that the family court judges are going to have to do. So any of us that come into this position are going to have to step. It's going to be a new day in family court. People are going to have to step in and be willing to be more managers and do more of the back office stuff to make sure that things get done and get done within their statutory timelines. That's where I think my experience as someone who has run my own business and run my own commercial property, and I have a degree in business administration and a master's degree in business administration. So I also have the qualifications to know how to run my division of family court. That's my nose. So, okay.
So when 6 out of 10 judges are retiring, that, as my father used to say, there are no problems, there are only opportunities. As you come in, do you think it's your job to, I don't know, shake things up, or are you looking at it more as being to preserve a good thing?
I think there's room for both. I mean, I think there are some very good aspects of the Jefferson Family Court system. Some things that have been looked at nationally with the way that we do things. But there is always, I think, room for improvement, and there has been a lot of frustration with things that go on downstairs in the clerk's office, and things getting in files, we're getting where they should be, and so there is always room to streamline and make sure that the system is functioning properly. Do we need to throw it out and start over? No. I think it's a system that works very well, and a lot of courts around the state are still adopting the family court system that we have here in Jefferson County. I just did that so you can mess with me.
We don't want people to know that you were mic'd. We want them to think that your voice just carries over the bells.
Okay.
You just resonate. Okay.
We good?
Yes.
So we talked a little bit about frustration. We talked a little bit about some other stuff. Tell me about how it is when everything works right.
Well, from my perspective of when everything works right as an attorney in family court, you feel like you have a client who is right, and you have done something either to protect their child or to make sure that that child is in the right, safe place, in the best place where they can be. And that's a feeling, that's what keeps you going to work, is knowing that you can do the right thing for people. In my guardian ad litem work, there have been times when adults have stopped me on the street and said, "Mr. Gatewood, you don't remember me. You were my attorney 12 years ago, but you made a real difference, and I appreciate it." And that's happened to me. It's happened at the mall. And that's when things go right, when we're able to intervene and help people. The kids who come into the dependency, abuse, and neglect docket, whose parents have often done horrendous things to them or are just neglecting them. If we can get them to a place where they're safe and where they can get on with their education and their life, and then you see in later years that they're in college. Recently I had one who was a nursing student at Spalding. Then you feel like the system has worked and you've done your job.
Does your experience with that affect you as a parent?
Yes, in any number of ways. I mean, it's easy to preach at people about what they should be doing. It's a lot more challenge to make sure you're doing what you should be doing as a parent. You know, I guess the two affect each other. It gives me perspective to be a parent and to know what a challenge it is. It also, you know, when I see the kids in the family court system and what happens to some of these children on the abuse and neglect docket, and I think of what could have happened to my own children if I had not adopted them, that affects me.
Okay, I want you to say that again.
A different way?
Well, the only thing I want you to change is instead of saying when I adopted them, say when we adopted them.
Okay. You know, the two, being a parent and being a family court attorney, the two, I think, impact each other or affect each other. Being a parent gives me the perspective to understand maybe what some of those parents who, you know, we might criticize on the family court docket, in the abuse and neglect docket, what they're going through and how tough of a job it is. And so it has given me a perspective that I didn't have. It's easy to preach at people about what they should be doing. It's a little more difficult when you know what a challenge is because you're trying to do it at home yourself. The reverse of that is sometimes when I see what's happened to some of these children on the abuse and neglect docket, and I think of what could have happened to our children if we hadn't adopted them, you know, that has a really great impact, you know, and it makes you want to hug your kids.
So let me ask kind of oddly, broadly philosophical question. Is the family court doing God's work?
Some of the work that the family court does is God's work, I believe. I believe that the dependency docket, that's the abuse and neglect docket, that's God's work. That's intervening and trying to, in some cases, save children's lives, and in some cases, make their lives, you know, into something worthwhile for them when they have parents who aren't doing that. The adoption part of that is God's work. You know, getting children to where they have parents who take care of and love and nurture them. The divorce docket, maybe not so much. But there's an upside of that. You know, in many cases, you get somebody who's in a really bad situation, and you can get them out of that. And the domestic violence docket, certainly. Everyday lives are saved through that because there's a whole series of things that happens once a court makes a finding of domestic violence, including that the perpetrator cannot own a gun and that they go into a national registry and the Vine system, all sorts of things that really serve to protect victims, and I think you would quantify as God's work.
That was good.
Every now and then I mess up.
Well, I mean, we all do.
Yeah.
We all do. What do you think it's like for your clients when they have to come in and see you?
Well, you know, I think it's as nice as it. I think nobody likes going to see an attorney. The only thing people like less than going to see their attorney is paying their attorney. But you know, I've been in self-employed for 17 years, and you know, I provide my own office space, and I want it to be a comfortable space. But you know, I go into some of these big firm offices, and I think, is this designed to intimidate the clients? And I don't want to intimidate my clients. So I like for my office to be comfortable. It's not the nicest office in town because I don't want them to feel like they're paying for marble and granite. And when I go to meet with a client, I sit down and I say, yeah, what's going on? Why don't you tell me what's happening? So I try to make it the least intimidating, least most enjoyable experience that I can make for people, considering the place in life where they are, where they're consulting an attorney. Nobody wants to be doing that. And I think that many of my clients have become my friends once the work is done. And I consider that, I take that as a compliment and maybe a testament to the fact that I am a pretty approachable person.
So when you're a judge, your goal isn't to become friends with.
No. And I think there has to be a difference with when you're a judge, that's a different role. And I think there really has to be an emotional detachment from the people who are in front of you. You have to have empathy. You have to understand what's maybe going on with them, and you have to let them know that you understand. But you can't get emotionally up into their case. You've got too many of them, and that impairs your ability to make a good decision. You have to be able to look at the facts and respond rationally to the facts and make the right decision.
To whom are you responsible, as you said? Who is a family court judge responsible to?
I think the family court judge is responsible to everybody who comes in front of them. I mean, I think that anybody who sets foot in your courtroom, you have a responsibility to them. To hear their case, to hear it fairly and impartially, and if it's a child who's in danger, you have a responsibility to protect that child. And you have to have the experience and the knowledge to know in your 5-minute hearing on the abuse and neglect docket whether a child is being abused and whether or not they're in danger and whether or not you have to make the tough decision to pull them out of their home. And on any abuse and neglect docket, there might be 20 cases. And so you've got a few minutes, if there's a hearing, to figure out what's going on.
Can you do that? Can you really render a meaningful, rational judgment?
You can, but you have to have the insight and the experience to be able to read the petition. And you have to have a team working in your courtroom that lets you gather the information you need to make that right decision.
So who is that team?
The team is your court support worker. The team is the guardian ad litem attorneys that you use. The team is the social workers, and you have to have a good enough relationship with the social workers that they can they feel comfortable letting you know what's going on. That they know they're expected to do a good job, but they can let you know what's happening. There are some judges who terrorize social workers and put social workers in jail, and that's not productive, and that's not what you want, in my opinion, what you want to do. You want them to be on your team, but you also want them to respect you enough to come to you with the right information.
And I would think that one of the things that would help you the day you walk in as a judge would be that you've been working there a long time and you know so many of the players.
Yeah, I will say of myself, I've been guardian ad litem for 14 years. The social workers know me. The folks in the family court section of the courthouse know me. And I know how that system works. And I could step into Division 6 tomorrow and run a docket because I've been there. And because I know what to look for in the cases. Particularly the abuse and neglect cases. I know what we're looking for and what steps we can take, what options are available to try to help children, what services are available through the cabinet, what we can do, what resources there are in the community. You want someone who's worked in that system who understands the first day what we can do for this child who's about to fail out of school because there's some underlying issue going on at home with mom or dad drinking too much or using drugs. what resources are available for that child. And whether or not you need to pull that child out, or whether there can be enough, a safety plan put in place to protect the child. And you want someone who knows that the first day. You don't want someone who's studying books so that they can maybe figure out after 6 months or so what they should be doing.
I would imagine that one of the other things about knowing the players is everybody has a different communication style, and there are people in the world who will make stuff sound like more of a crisis than it is, and you like knowing who those people are so that you can sort of equalize the things. Is that important?
Yes, and I will tell you that just about everybody who calls my office thinks they're having a crisis. And this is family law. This is not heart surgery. So although there are situations where things are very important and you need to move as quickly as you can, there just aren't as many real crises as people think there are, particularly in certain kinds of cases. Now, in the abuse and neglect cases, you do find some crises, and you need to be able to pick those out. And you're right, discern whether someone's trying to use that system to gain an advantage in a divorce case, in a custody case. You have to be able to figure out when something's really happening and when somebody's trying to work the system. And I've seen plenty of people try to work the system. I used to joke on my dependency docket. I've got a rather prominent nose, and that I used to say I could smell a meth lab. And I can smell a meth lab. I know when they're, I've got the experience.
So when you look at the known facts of the case, between those facts are things that are unknown, and you can look at a situation and say, okay, meth problem.
Right.
Here.
Right. Something's going on. This child is acting out because something is happening. Or these behaviors that this child is exhibiting are indicators that there has been sexual abuse somewhere else. We may not know where it's coming from, but you can, if you know what you're looking for, you can tell when that's happening. And a lot of times behaviors at school are a result of something that's going on at home. So there are a lot of factors that 14 years of experience as a guardian ad litem that I've learned that you can use that are dog whistles that something else is going on.
What is a guardian ad litem?
Guardian ad litem. A guardian ad litem is a court-appointed attorney. It's a creature of common law, but also it's codified in our state statute.
Wait a second. Can you pull in close for this particular answer? What's a guardian ad litem?
A guardian ad litem is a court-appointed attorney. It's a creature of both common law, but also it's codified in our statute. The Kentucky Constitution guarantees that children who are the victims of abuse and neglect are entitled to legal representation. So the guardian ad litem is the attorney who represents their interest in the abuse and neglect case when perhaps they're going to be removed from their parents' home, perhaps they're going to go with a relative, perhaps they're going to be in foster care, perhaps they're going to stay in the home with a safety plan. They have an attorney there making sure that their rights are protected. And that role follows through to the termination of parental rights if the parent's rights were to be terminated, and even on to an adoption if the child is ultimately placed for adoption. So the guardian ad litem is the person who from start to finish represents a child who is alleged to have been abused. Now, guardian ad litems also play roles in other types of cases. Guardian ad litems can be appointed in divorce cases if the court needs someone to get in and represent the kids and find out what's going on. Because many times in a divorce case, it's difficult to figure out what's really happening. And so someone who could go and talk to the children and then report to the court what the guardian ad litem believes is in the best interest of the children. But it is a creature of statute that has a common law origin but basically, it involves advocating and protecting the rights of children.
Okay, we can go back.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to be able to cut away to that definition and have it look a little different.
Good job.